Hi, welcome to Exploring the Illusion of Free Will. My name is George Ortega, and this is episode number 148, Free Will and Why Causality is a Priori. And I'll explain that, but I want to wish you a Merry Christmas because I see on my schedule that this is scheduled to be broadcast on Christmas Day and also actually on Christmas Eve. I guess so yeah, Merry Christmas. Now here, before we start, I gotta just go into this very briefly. There's this movie Zeitgeist that's you could catch it on the internet, Amazon.com or whatever, and it starts out, this whole all right, I kind of was raised Christian, but I'm actually Jewish, so I started practicing Judaism as an adult, whatever, and now I'm kind of more, I'm spiritual, but I'm not really conventionally religious. And one of the reasons is because as this movie Zeitgeist explains, this whole Christmas thing, Jesus, the guy the whole story is it's stolen from Egyptian mythology. In other words, the December 25th birth, the death and resurrection, the all this stuff. I mean, if you watch the movie, all these features of Jesus' life and also of Moses' life, they're co-opted, they're stolen from myths of previous civilizations. I mean, and that, the reason I mention this is because, our world, one of the things that I've learned from doing this show is, our world really isn't interested in truth. It's interested in, feeling good. So probably, after 148 episodes, I'm probably going to be segueing maybe after 156 or so, because I want to 156 is 3 years of episodes, 3 solid years, one a week, whatever on average. And so yeah, I think after this, I'm going to go back to before this show, I did a show on happiness called The Happiness Show, and I did that for 3 years. And that was great because that kind of helped create this kind of happiness movement. Me and this guy from Connecticut, Lionel Ketchin, he's got this happiness club there. He's got clubs all over the world. He's probably got over 100 now. Yeah, we kind of promoted the idea, and it was great because back then I was working on my own happiness. I went from being about 85% happy to 100% happy, right? But then I kind of at that point my conscience kicked in, and I started working to end global poverty and to work on climate change and stuff. But then after a few years working in politics and stuff, I realized, well, the kind of stuff that I wanted to happen, I realized that I was relatively powerless to make it happen. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is what I want to do after this, because again, 156 episodes, 3 years, I've pretty much done what I've wanted to do with the show. It's out there, and now what needs to happen is a major documentary, another bestseller. I mean, Sam Harris, who's an atheist neuroscientist, he wrote a book called Free Will, March 2012, but it was only 66 pages. It's kind of it wasn't a very comprehensive treatment of the topic. But we need somebody like Malcolm Gladwell, somebody, another best-selling author that really captures the world's imagination about not only why free will just doesn't exist, can't exist, it's impossible, which is what this show is about really, but why it's important. Okay, let's get to the topic. All right. Free will and why causality is a priori. I want to explain what a priori means. A priori means that there's some things in reality that are so self-evident that you don't have to rely on empiricism. Empiricism is the scientific method of replication. Some things are so fundamental you actually can't rely on empiricism to demonstrate them. And the second part is some things are so fundamental to nature, to reality, that the scientific method requires them. Okay, in other words, scientific method would require causality to work. Scientific method is same cause, same effect. That's why they do experiments. If they have the same cause and same effect, whether they do whatever, then they know there's a pattern, and that helps them to establish scientific truth. All right, again, that requires causality. That's how fundamental causality is. Now, why is causality important? I came here I don't have notes because I just didn't want to do this show. I'm working on my happiness. I'm tired of this stuff, so I didn't bring notes. But all right, so let's see if all right. The idea is causality, the law of cause and effect, makes free will completely, completely impossible. There's no way we can have a free will. Okay, some people say, well, not everything has a cause, which is an insane thing to say. It's just like, it's absurd, just logically, everything has to have a cause. Try to imagine something happening that's not caused. In other words, like, it just happens. Things don't just happen. Even particles that pop in and out of existence, like on the quantum level, they must have come from somewhere. And I just want to briefly, like with quantum phenomenon and stuff, a lot of times they say, well, we can't find a cause. Now here's something interesting about reality. I mean, I should say it later, but I want to say it now. Okay, the universe. Okay, we know. There's a certain, we know things about the universe. We know, for example, how long it's been in existence, approximately, at least the known universe, since the Big Bang, about 13.7 billion years. And we know it has to contain a certain amount of energy. I don't know how we know it because I'm not a physicist. I mean, like, I haven't researched or whatever, but the physicists know, right? So here's the thing. So, like, basically, we're only aware of, our best scientific apparatus is aware of, can detect only 4% of the universe. This is amazing. The other 96% is a combination of dark energy and dark matter. 70, 75 point whatever percent is that. And so, like, basically what I'm saying is, like, if we can't find sometimes a cause to things, that's because we can only see like 4% of whatever. All right. The reason causality is important to free will is, like, because it's very basic. It's like, if everything has a cause, because that's what causality says, everything has a cause, nothing happens without a cause, then that means, like, any time we make a decision, we say something, we do something, we decide something, there's going to be a cause to that, okay? And there's going to be a cause to that cause, because everything has to have a cause. And the causes, again, like, always go back in time. You can't have a cause following the effect of something, all right? So it goes back. So if everything has a cause, you have the what you think, say, feel, do, whatever, having a cause that's before that, and that has a cause that's before that, and that has a cause that's before that, and you have this cause and chain effect that spans back to before you were born, before the planet was created, before the galaxy was created, before the sun was created, before, back to the Big Bang, and who knows what happened before that. All right. That's causality. That's why causality makes free will impossible. Free will, I just want to define what I mean by free will. Free will is like, people believe that we have a free will. They believe that, like, we do whatever we want to do. If we want to think something, we think it. If we want to feel something, we think it. And nothing that's not in our control is making us do any of this. All right, here's the thing. Causality, this law of cause and effect, this fundamental law of nature, is not in our control. And that's what makes us do everything we do. That's what makes us think everything we think, feel. We're like puppets. We're robots. Okay, that's the thing. Whatever. All right, so, like, so here's the thing. So, like, some people say, well, how do you know everything has a cause? Again, so if you apply simple logic, you understand everything has a cause. But this show, I'm going to explain why causality is so fundamental, that it's a priori, that it's so self-evident, that it's like, it underlies all knowledge. It's self-evident. And so, like, here's the argument. Okay. Let's go with another a priori. And a priori is kind of like very similar to axiomatic. In math, they use, like, premises. Like, an axiomatic premise is something that's given, it's accepted, it's like you have to, like, have certain basic assumptions, presumptions, in order to conduct science and math and all. So, like, all right, so the most fundamental, irrefutable, incontestable fact of reality, of the universe, is that it exists. Okay, that's an a priori fact. Nobody could possibly present any evidence that it doesn't exist. Reality exists, okay? I mean, like, to say that it doesn't would be absurd. You can't prove the reality exists empirically because, like, well, it depends how you define empiricism, but sometimes people say that it has to be falsifiable. But you can't falsify reality. In other words, you can't show an instance where there is no reality. So anyway, so, like, a priori means it's, like, self-evident. It doesn't require any reasoning or any experimentation to demonstrate. It's so fundamental. So like the universe, think about it. The universe exists. It's a priori knowledge, okay? First fundamental fact of reality exists. What's the second fundamental fact of reality? A priori fact. The universe changes, okay? Ever since the Big Bang, like things have changed. There's particles are moving through space, through time, okay? Things happen. If there was no change, think about it. If there was no change, if the universe existed without change, everything would be forever frozen. Nothing would ever happen. There would be no Big Bang, no stars, no planets, nothing. Nothing could happen because there'd be no change. It'd be like static, all right. So that's the second fundamental a priori fact of reality. Reality changes. You can't dispute that. You can't deny that. Okay, a priori again. So how does this causality apply to this? What is change? Change is most technically a particle being at one point at one moment in time and then at a different point the next moment in time. In other words, like the universe, from the Big Bang onward, because who knows what happens before that, but you would think something happened. The universe is simply like this really, really very small. The universe is teeny, like when it first began. It was like, about the size of a nucleus of an atom. And this is like, all these galaxies, hundreds of billions. It was condensed, crunched to like, I forget the term. There's a singularity, whatever. So anyways, what happens? So you've got the universe at its first moment, right, before it exploded, right? The second moment, it starts exploding out and, making itself, whatever. And so like you have a particle at the first moment being at a different place because it's expanding everywhere at the next moment of the universe, okay? That is change. In other words, that's causality. Like change is one particle being at one, and again, this change can apply to everything. It can apply to everything that's happening today. But, all right, so in terms of this, why causality is a priori, ask yourself, what is change? Change has to have a cause. In other words, there is a cause for a particle being at one place, one moment, and a different place the next moment. Now, in terms of physics, basically, it has to do with, basically momentum. Momentum is like the velocity and direction of a particle. Nothing can move without momentum, okay? So momentum is the cause of the particle being at one place at one point in time, at one moment in time, and at a different place the next moment. All right, so here's the thing. So if change requires causality or is an expression of causality, if change would not happen unless it was caused, because again, momentum is a cause. There's other causes. There's other laws in the universe, like gravity is a law. There's forces. There's like the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force. There's gravity. And these are causes. In other words, these forces cause change in the universe. So if these changes are causal, require causality, then obviously causality must be as fundamental a fact of nature as is change and as is the fact that the universe exists. That is how fundamental. So in other words, some people with quantum mechanics, they say, well, like the quantum levels, things happen without a cause, they just happen. No, that's just some scientists, some physicists say, well, we haven't been able to determine what the cause is. We haven't found any stuff. But again, as I explained earlier, asserting that is it's like, let's say there's a large room, right? And you have a flashlight and you're pointing it at 4% of the room, which represents 4% of the known universe. And you're not finding a cause there, and you're concluding, well, it doesn't exist. So anyway, that's what these scientists do. They say, well, we haven't found a cause, and so it can't exist or it doesn't exist, whatever. Totally illogical, totally unscientific. We went through this last show. These are about, the scientists who conclude this, they're good maybe at learning and and remembering what they learned and reciting what they've learned and applying what they've learned. They're not at all good at understanding what they've learned. They're not good at logic, basic critical analysis. All right, so basically, so the idea is like, even at the quantum level, everything is caused. And again, even if things, I mean, the interesting thing about this, I mean, this is like very, very strong, irrefutable proof that causality is a priori, is so fundamental you can't refute it, and obviously causality refutes free will. But even if causality didn't govern everything, an impossibility, really. Even if things would happen uncaused, you couldn't claim that something uncaused was being caused by a human being or a human will. So in other words, that claiming that some things aren't caused wouldn't help free will anyhow. All right, but again, the importance of this show is because things are not uncaused. Things are caused, and causality is the reason why free will is impossible. All right, I think we've explained this. So again, a priori knowledge is so fundamental, and again, a priori knowledge, causality. Now I want to relate this to how we do science. So basically science is generally done with the scientific method. Scientific method is otherwise known as empiricism. It's basically experimentation. You do an experiment, okay? You have the same kind of conditions, okay? And then with the same kind of conditions, you get the same kind of outcome. And if you do an experiment one time, 100 times, 1,000 times, if you have the same initial conditions and you introduce a certain factor in the same way, you'll have the same result each time. That's what empiricism is. And so it's basically, from school you probably learned empiricism, the scientific method, is basically described as same cause, same effect. So the way we do science, again, requires causality. That's how fundamental causality is, not just to the universe, but to our understanding of the universe. Okay. We've done, this is yeah. All right, I think we've done this, but I just why does this matter? Because right now, I mean, I've done this 148 shows, and I always try to explain why we have free will, but why is this important? Because I mean, I could go over this again, but I think you got it. If you're not watching this on TV, just rewind and watch it again. But why is this important? Okay, and I should do a lot more shows on this. I don't understand the universe. If I had a free will, I would have done so many more shows on this, because this is why it's important. Because the thing is, a lot of people won't understand this unless they see a benefit to this. The problem is, when we attribute free will to ourselves and other people, what happens is when things go wrong, when other people do things they shouldn't do, when we do things we shouldn't do, we either blame them or sometimes hate them, sometimes seek revenge and want them to suffer and stuff. That's really horrible stuff, We do that blaming other people, or we blame ourselves. We do something wrong and we punish ourselves, because a lot of this is we learn, for example, when we're really little, when we're toddlers and stuff, we do something wrong, our parents punish us, because punishment is kind of in psychology, it's operant conditioning, reward, punishment. It's we will, if we get punished, or we know we're going to get punished for something, well, chances are we won't do it. So punishment is a tool for creating desirable behavior. But what happens a lot of times is that as adults, we're never taught that we don't have a free will. We're taught we have a free will, so we don't have our parents punishing us. We integrate this, we internalize this punishment thing, and when we do stuff wrong, we punish ourselves. We feel guilty. We feel the pain of guilt. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a conscience, because we should have a conscience. We should know the difference between right and wrong. Right is basically what creates happiness for ourselves and others, and wrong is what limits it or minimizes or whatever. So I'm not saying we go without a conscience, but we don't need this pain of guilt thing to So basically the free will illusion, the free will belief, the myth of free will creates so much unnecessary conflict and pain in the world. You wouldn't believe it, Again, so many wars. It's really horrible. in the United States, like, we're not a good country, all right? Fine, we overcame slavery, we overcame stuff in the past, but we're torturing animals, and there's like, we imprison more people, a greater percentage of our population than any other country of the world, because it's all about money. Like before, prisons were built and maintained by states and counties and stuff, but now they privatized them, so there's private companies, that own prisons that are making money on this. So the idea is like, with this free will thing, we create a lot more laws that are unnecessary, prohibit things that shouldn't, just so some people make money. But the worst thing is that, like, when people do things that are bad, fine, we have to like maintain order. We have to like have a rule of law. People, we have to protect society and civility and stuff, But with the free will illusion, we don't just like punish people the minimum amount to deter others from doing something or to correct the behavior of people who've done something wrong. That's really the purpose, the rational purpose of punishment. But under the free will belief, we want them to suffer. We say they're evil, they're bad, they did what they did of their own free will, and so they deserve to suffer. So like that encourages hatred, that encourages vengeance, that encourages a sadistic kind of like a punishing of people. That the very unfortunate fact is they had no choice but do what they did. Every prisoner in every prison that's ever been made, every jail, they're there because they're very unfortunate. Not one person that has ever been in prison or in jail or wherever, had a choice to do but what they did. That's what lack of free will means. In other words, like, some of us are lucky. Some of us are lucky that we're raised in certain ways. We have certain genes that prevent us from doing things that are illegal or immoral or whatever. Others of us are not as lucky. So the idea is like, fine, like some people, so, we have to maintain society, but the free will belief just injects into our civil, our criminal, our institutions, just like this element of hatred. In other words, we're not just like punishing and rewarding people to condition their behavior so they behave in a more appropriate way. We're hating people, based on this illusion. So that's why this is important. And it doesn't just apply sociologically. Think of like the people in your life. Think of like friends that you've had and you've had falling outs, and like they've said something, that you felt was hurtful, or, you have, and like, a lot of times what happens is, like, because of this free will illusion, it's like we get so wrapped up in blaming them and they blame us and all that, we don't often get around to actually solving, the problem, which is, I'm not saying that that there aren't problems in the world. A lot of times we do things we shouldn't be doing or say things we shouldn't be saying. But what happens with the free will illusion is, like, we focus on that. We if we're so busy blaming them and they're busy blaming us and all, that distracts us from dealing with what's confronting us. So in other words, anytime we have a fight with someone, we're not like, harmonious with them. The reality is that it's fate, it's the universe, it's this law of cause and effect, God, call it whatever you want, that's doing this to us. It's doing this to the person, it's doing this to us. Okay, so what's the benefit of overcoming this illusion of free will? When you understand that nothing's up to us, that we're compelled to do everything we do, nothing is really up to us, then what happens is that you and whomever you were like fighting with, whoever you're in conflict with, are all of a sudden on the same side. You're not aggressing toward each other. You're like asking yourselves, why is the universe doing this to us? Why is the universe creating these circumstances where we're at odds with each other? We're like differing in opinion. We're kind of like hurting each other in certain ways. And so like when at least it's not like understanding the free will is an illusion is going to solve everything, because you still have to kind of like understand, right and wrong and why things happen. But at least, overcoming the illusion of free will, you're on the same side. You're on the same side as allies, cooperating instead of competing to understand why things happen, and that process, that cooperative process, can help you, overcome whatever it is. Like with marriage therapy, couples therapy, just like just so many parts of life involve conflict between people. Then this, you can't escape it. So again, that's one of the powerful reasons why this is so important, because it really affects us on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so we got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to reiterate the basic theme. All right. Free will, the belief in free will would mean that, like, we could do, think, feel, say, whatever we do, independent of anything that's not in our control making us do whatever we do. That we do what we do because we want to, and nothing is making us do what we do, nothing is making us decide what we decide, okay? The problem with that is, yes, causality is actually governing us. We have no more free will than does a puppet. We have no more control over anything than does a puppet. And it's causality that makes that impossible. But like some people say, well, perhaps not everything is caused. So like the purpose of this show was to show that causality is so fundamental to nature that it's irrefutable. It's completely irrefutable. It's unequivocally irrefutable. You can't, and it's so fundamental an aspect of nature that it can be considered a priori, self-evident, along with the self-evident fact that there is change in the universe, because like if there was no change, nothing would be happening, and along with the a priori fact that the universe exists. That's how fundamental the causality that refutes free will is to reality. Okay, we got 43 seconds left, and it's so that's so again, this is episode 148. If I had a free will, I'd explain it so well that you'd all get it, and we'd move into a new consciousness, because that's how big this is. In the last 24 seconds, famous philosopher John Searle said that for free will to be overcome, for the world to understand we don't have free will, would be a bigger revolution in our thinking than Einstein or Copernicus or Newton or Galileo or Darwin, and that it would alter our whole conception of our relation with the universe. It would be brand new consciousness. All right, thanks for watching. We'll be back, explaining this more on other shows. Merry Christmas.